Welcome back to Area DMG. I'm your host, Phil Wesley, the Mile High Mouth, and today we're going to talk about the top 10 Super Nintendo games that aren't on new 3DS Virtual Console, but darn well should be. Before we go into that, let's actually talk about what is already on the Super Nintendo Virtual Console on the 3DS in the United States, or rather in North America. We actually have a pretty good selection. Games like Super Mario World, Contra 3. We're going to just keep we're going to slowly show you these covers. Earthbound, F-Zero, Donkey Kong Country, Donkey Kong Country 2, Super Mario Kart, Super Punch-Out, Super Metroid, and the Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. Oh, and Pilot Wings is there too. There's quite a lot of games already on it. And there's quite a lot of games that we'd like to see show up on the system. We're going to talk, before we get into our little list, we're going to talk about some of the obvious games. There was a leak after the first Super Nintendo games were announced, where it was discovered that several games were listed inside of the program that the Nintendo 3DS, or rather the new Nintendo 3DS, uses to play the game. Data miners were able to find that there were several games that had listings, like for example Street Fighter 2 for 2, Street Fighter Turbo, 2 Turbo, Super Street Fighter 2, games like Donkey Kong Country, and there were a few others, including one that was kind of a little strange, like Super Mario All-Star was listed amongst those that were data mined to possibly be coming out on the new Nintendo 3DS Virtual Console in the future. I know there's already the original Mario games are available on Virtual Console, but Nintendo is never one to let something just lay. They will find a way to charge you for the same thing over and over and over again. Now, this particular list doesn't include certain titles. This is kind of a top 10 list. Part of it's a little fantasy based, essentially, because I know some of these that we probably won't be able to get on here. And it'll surprise you to note that there are Chrono Trigger is not on this list, and neither is Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, Final Fantasy II, or Final Fantasy III. We're also leaving out games like Secret of Mana and Secret of Evermore. There are some games that we know will probably not come to the Super Nintendo Virtual Console on the Game Boy. Those would be Star Fox due to legal issues, and Killer Instinct due to Rare. There are a few others that we'd like to mention honorably that aren't in this top 10 before we get into the top 10. One being Super Mario RPG Legend of 7 Stars, which actually came out on Virtual Console on the Wii U, and we'd love to see it on the new 3DS. Although there are several games on the Wii U Virtual Console that aren't on the new 3DS Virtual Console, or on the 3DS Virtual Console right now, that make no sense not to be there. Those being Star Tropics 1, Star Tropics 2, and Earthbound Beginnings. I don't know why they haven't put those out yet. Also, Excitebike Versus. It's on the Wii U, but it's not on the 3DS, even though they both have Virtual Console NES titles. Well, let's get down to business. I've arranged these in kind of a random order. But my number one over here is one that I would really like to have show up on the 3DS, or rather new 3DS Virtual Console. Let's start with number 10 over here, and that is Castlevania 4. Super Castlevania 4, mainly because Castlevania 1, 2, and 3 are already on the system, and if Konami got Castlevania 4 on there, just like they did Alien Wars, they could also get Dracula X on there. And I would, even though this is not the superior version of Dracula X, or rather, I'm trying to remember what the name of that one is. It's also this particular game is also available completely uncut on the Sega Saturn and on the PSP. But yeah, it would be nice to get Castlevania 4 and by that measure Dracula X. Although I think both of these will probably need to be re-rated. One of the big issues with getting stuff onto Virtual Console is you have to re-rate it with the ESRB. And that, depending on the budget of the game, can cost anywhere from $400 to about $800 or to even $1,200, depending on the budget for your title. Okay, so our first one up is Castlevania 4. Our second one up, and remember that these are kind of fantasy based, SimCity. SimCity for the Super Nintendo is superb. Say that 5 times fast. Now, SimCity is a game that I grew up playing on the Commodore 64. And on the Commodore 64, you had a block which had a letter that said C for commercial, R for residential, or I for industrial. And when stuff moved in, little black dots showed up on the squares. So SimCity, with its much improved graphics, really great interface, the ability to use the Nintendo mouse, and just overall extra graphics and sound and really nice presentation, was an award-winning combination at the time, and it's one of the better versions of SimCity available on consoles. This is one that I'd like to see them work out the licensing stuff with and just get it on Virtual Console. That would be nice. Also, you could build a fantastic city and then let Bowser run right through it. Oh, speaking of stuff that's going to run right through it, Donkey Kong Country 3 is coming to Virtual Console. On the Super Nintendo Virtual Console on the 3DS. It's already out in Japan, only a matter of time before we get it. It's the one I liked the least, because it's the one I played the least. Getting a chance to try it again, I might like it a little bit more. But let's get on to the next game in our list, number 7. No, sorry, no, 10, 9, 8. And this would be Jurassic Park from Ocean. To be perfectly honest, some of these games on here have no chance of ever coming out on the Super Nintendo Virtual Console. But one can dream. Jurassic Park, I remember playing through this game in one sitting because you couldn't save to beat it. And then when you beat it, the ending sequence is a congratulations and then a Mode 7 flyby of the island. I know people love the Genesis version because you could play as a dinosaur, but the top-down Jurassic Park on the Super Nintendo, with its indoor Doom-style sequences, actually had tension to it. It was actually a lot less arcadey, a lot more deep, and except for that bummer of an ending and no ability to save, it was a pretty good game. The thing about Jurassic Park on the Super Nintendo, though, if they put this on Virtual Console, although there's very little chance of that ever happening, it would be nice to have that suspend save, because that would make the game incredibly more playable. Still a good game. Next one up on this list is Lagoon. This is a Kemco Sika RPG. It's kind of a standard RPG, but it has really great music. And the cool thing about it is it's Kemco Sika, and Kemco has been releasing RPGs for the Nintendo 3DS and mobile phones for a long time. Seriously, every month some type of new RPG from Kemco comes out. Usually it's a port of something made with RPG Maker or one of those other type of RPG making programs, and it's usually a port of a mobile game. These people put out like a zillion RPGs a year, and Lagoon is pretty good actually, especially in the music department. Almost every Kemco game that's out for the that's available right now on the 3DS eShop, all those weird RPGs from Kemco, almost all of them have amazing music. Some of them have really good writing. Some of them are very nostalgic and feel like old Super Nintendo RPGs or Saturn RPGs, and they're just great. I would love to see this game on Virtual Console. Now the next one on our list is Zombies Ate My Neighbors. This is a Konami one, although a lot of this belongs to Lucasfilm, which, if I remember correctly, that's owned by Disney, ladies and gentlemen. I think this was released on the Wii console, Wii Virtual Console. I don't think it's been released on Wii U Virtual Console yet, but this is one of those games where this was a zeitgeist of its time. Just a superb, fun, quirky horror game with lots of comedic elements. If there was ever a franchise that needed to be revived and brought into the modern world with like slightly updated graphics and more co-op, I mean, it's got 2-player co-op. It could use 4-player co-op. That would be great. Zombies Ate My Neighbors is one of those that deserves another chance. I think they need to dig this one up and put it on Virtual Console for the 3DS. For the new 3DS. Definitely. I love it. It's great. And you should track it down. It's a good game. If you haven't played Zombies Ate My Neighbors, you really need to. Now, let's see. This one would be, next on our list is Turtles in Time. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4, Turtles in Time. Now, you can do co-op games on the 3DS right now. And this would be just amazing to have on the new 3DS. Because right now, you can get Mighty Final Fight, Streets of Rage 2, and apparently, oh well, there's also Double Dragon and Double Dragon 2, and apparently one of the leaked titles was Final Fight and Final Fight 2 for the Super Nintendo. Having this thrown in on that list would make the new 3DS, quite frankly, the best portable for playing side-scrolling beat-em-ups. I mean, it's just missing Battletoads, and we'll have to bug Rare about that. But yeah, that would be amazing with like wireless co-op, because you can do that. You can do download play. The next one in our list is Yuna Racers. You know why you don't see much of this game? Because of Pixar. Because of Pixar. The people who put out Finding Dory, they are the reason you don't see Yuna Racers anywhere. They're jerks about it. Because, you know, this thing looks like something from one of their things. There's all sorts of legal problems with Yuna Racers. It'd be nice if they could put all that behind them and just put this really quirky and really fun and challenging unicycle racing game out there. It reminds me a bit of like games like Ollie Ollie, but with more freedom. It's a good game. Now next up on our list we're out here at number 3. Number 3 is The Illusion of Gaia. Now there are some items that I wanted to include in this, but I didn't have a copy of them to demonstrate here, because like there's some games like King Griffey Jr.'s Winning Run, which is fantastic, and then games like there were some really good, like Mortal Kombat 2 for the Super Nintendo was pretty good. And you know that somewhere along the way they'd love to re-release that onto Virtual Console. But there were a bunch of games that we didn't have in this list because, well, I'm only going off of stuff that like I have copies of, or mentioning certain items that I felt were, well, appropriate for this. Now this is Illusion of Gaia. This one was published by Nintendo, and it's a fantastic RPG that really needs to be revisited. I think a lot of people could have a lot of fun with this game, and I would love to see the Miiverse for it, because a lot of the characters are fantastic and interesting, and just, well, yeah, this would be worth it for the Miiverse alone. Illusion of Gaia is a bit underrated. It has some difficulty and problems with difficulty, and some play control issues, but other than that, solid game. Other stuff I'd like to mention, the Actraiser games would be amazing on this system. And then again, there's also stuff like Super R-Type and Phalanx, which would be fantastic on that. But let's get to number 2. Number 2 is Demon's Crest from Capcom. Now there is hope that this might be one of the games that Capcom decides to bring over. Capcom has been really good about bringing over their older titles to Virtual Console, especially with the with like the Wii U and the 3DS. In particular, games like the Mega Man 7, Mega Man X, Mega Man X2, Mega Man X3, and Mega Man Soccer and Mega Man Bass are already kind of confirmed from that original data leak I mentioned earlier. But Demon's Crest, last I checked, wasn't on that list. Demon's Crest and Super Ghouls and Ghosts, of which Demon's Crest and Gargoyle's Quest are a spin-off of, would be fantastic on the Super Nintendo Virtual Console on 3DS. Now, Gargoyle's Quest 1 and the NES version of 2 are available on the Virtual Console right now, and they're totally worth checking out. Demon's Crest was fantastic, and it would be nice to see this one show up again. Now, there's some other ones that I'd like to see. I liked the Super Nintendo version of Doom. That one was actually pretty good. But let's get to my #1 pick here on the Super Nintendo for Virtual Console. Now, this one's a little weird in that it's Mario Paint. Now, Mario Paint required the mouse, which you could easily emulate by just running your stylus across the bottom screen. And then you could just tap one of the buttons, like the L and R button or one of the side buttons, or just tap on something to activate the left and right buttons of the mouse. Mario Paint would be an amazing game to bring back. Now, Nintendo's kind of replaced this series with Art Academy, and that's okay, but there are some things you could do with Mario Paint in particular that you can't do with Art Academy that made Mario Paint the much superior program. In particular with Mario Paint, the thing I really liked was the animation tools, or the ability to compose your own instruments and stuff inside the game. A lot of those have made their way into other things. Like parts of Mario Paint are evident in the WarioWare series, they're evident in some of the customization tools in Animal Crossing. It has an influence in Super Mario Maker, and lots of other games. But the original Mario Paint is one of the games that I spent a lot of time with when I was younger. Mainly because you could hook up a VCR and record the stuff that you made on Mario Paint. You could make your own little animation for that, and it was great. The animation tools were intuitive. There was a guide inside the Mario Paint instruction manual, which allowed me to translate hiragana and various other Japanese writing. I used it to translate stuff when back in 1997 and early 1998, there was not anything very reliable for translating Japanese to English. I could find some stuff where I could look up words in there by spelling them out, but I had to look up the symbols to find out what they were. In fact, a lot of early articles that DMGIs had on Pokemon, we got information by, well, I would find the information on Nintendo's website, and then I would look up the different symbols inside the Mario Paint instruction manual, and then go and find out what those words meant by typing out their full pronunciation into Babelfish. Because like it was back at the time, it was like Babelfish or another one that was similar to it. Because at the time, we didn't have all the translation tools that we have nowadays. We're kind of spoiled with Google Translate. But yeah, I had to use Mario Paint to translate that. And I have the player's guide for this and all the equipment for it. And we'll show it sometime. We'll pop it into like the Retron 5 and maybe record some footage or whatnot of it. But Mario Paint is fantastic. It had all sorts of little pre-made stuff you could color. The tools were intuitive. It was kind of limited in comparison to, say, Photoshop or whatnot, because this didn't really have layers, but it had almost an almost infinite undo button, and it just had such a style to it that was just perfect for the time. So these are my top 10 games that I'd like to see on the Nintendo New 3DS Super Nintendo Virtual Console. They are Castlevania 4, SimCity, Jurassic Park, Lagoon, Zombies Ate My Neighbors, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4, Turtles in Time, Yuna Racers, Illusion of Gaia, Demon's Crest, and Mario Paint. There are some games we didn't mention, like Kirby's Dream Land 3, which was also part of that leak. This is coming to the Super Nintendo Virtual Console anyways. We know it is. And we'll probably see Kirby Superstar show up on that, even though Kirby Superstar Ultra is the much better title. But yeah, that's my list. I purposefully left out stuff like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy because this list would be boring if I put like Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy VI, Final Fantasy II, Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, Secret of Mana, Secret of Evermore. You kind of get what I'm getting at there? It would have been boring and unusual if I did that. It wouldn't be interesting. And well, these are my picks. There's some stuff I'd love to put into this, like for example, I really like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters or Sunset Riders. Those are excellent games. But I don't have a copy of them with me right here. I have Sunset Riders on the Genesis, so we didn't put it in here. But yeah, what would your top 10 games be that aren't on the Virtual Console in North America and are for the Super Nintendo? Let me know in the comments below. Hit that thumbs up if you even partially agree with this list. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And until the next video comes out, you are now caught up.